Power to the truth. This is Margo. This is Tuesday, May 21st, 2019, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, United States of America. We're going to look at sulfur dioxide again first, just to review what we had seen Sunday in my report, because we had an earthquake up here last night in Siberia, not too far away from this large release that happened on Saturday the 18th. We can see it here. This is Novaya Zemlya here. This is Greenland here. Canada is over here. Here's all Russia and Siberia. So if you recall, there was a high release on Saturday, and then there was another high release on Tuesday. We can see, and it's moving around, getting caught up in the jet stream. There's also a release over here in Canada, and I'm doing some research and going to do a special report on what I'm finding going on in Canada. But right now we're focused on this area. And then, so that was Sunday. So Saturday and Sunday there were two high releases. And then Monday night was the earthquake. Here's another good size, looks like another release to me, or it could just be kind of spreading out, but definitely high levels of sulfur dioxide here. And here it is from today. Looks like another signature. This is the signature of a large burst that goes high up in the atmosphere very quickly, and it's this exclamation point type shape. So when I see these, a lot of times it's a precursor to an earthquake that's going to happen, not necessarily right at that area, but somewhere nearby within the next couple of days. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday, 4 days in a row with that. That's a lot. And I'll just show you real quick where this earthquake happened. Here it is, right up here. So here's Novaya Zemlya. The sulfur dioxide release we're seeing is originating about over here. It's just to the east of Norilsk, and here's the Yamal Peninsula. This is part of the Siberia traps here, and then I don't know why it went out so far. Then this earthquake that happened was a little bit further up on the coast of the Laptev Sea, near Nordvik. This was a 4.8, and it came in last night at 8:45 p.m. my time, Pacific time. So it's right there. Not too far from the red line. It's definitely considered an Arctic earthquake. So it's highly significant. Seeing lots of activity all over the world now. So there's that I just wanted to show people. Now I've got a couple of articles that I want to share, and then we'll do our earthquake report. The first one is from CNN, and it's dated May the 6th, and the title is Arctic Permafrost is melting so fast it's damaging the equipment scientists use to measure it. So here's a picture. This is a man who takes in the view over the Ilulissat Ice Ford and the Disco Bay in West Greenland. So that's pretty ice-free. So let's see what this article says. In the Arctic, a changing climate isn't something that might happen in the near future. In the uppermost stretches of the northern hemisphere, it's already happening now. Temperatures are warming, sea ice is retreating. A new study, it's always a new study, says permafrost is melting so fast in the Arctic that it's not only ripping up the landscape, but it's also wrecking scientific equipment and making climate change even worse for all of us. It releases gases and changes the landscape. As permafrost, ground that is frozen year-round melts. They think it's going to be permanently frozen, but obviously it's not. It releases carbon and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. A lot of methane is released too. Current modeling for this is based on an expectation that permafrost thaws slowly, thus carbon would be released into the atmosphere at a certain rate. But this new study, published last week in the journal Nature, says since some Arctic permafrost is melting much more quickly, higher amounts of greenhouse gases and carbon could be released as well. That would warm the planet up more quickly. So we know all about that. And the consequences would be okay, so I'll just read this. Scientists at this point just don't know what all the consequences of such permafrost-induced carbon release could be, though in the study, researchers estimate it could produce twice as much gas than what current models are predicting. Rapid permafrost melt isn't just releasing more greenhouse gases into air, it's changing the landscape too, since permafrost affects about a quarter of the land in the northern hemisphere. The group of scientists who conducted the study talked of research sites in Alaska now covered with lakes that a year ago were a forest, and they also saw rivers filled with sediment that once flowed clear. All of these abrupt changes to the land made it more difficult for them to conduct research, since the scientific equipment they depend on was sometimes literally swallowed up by the land. Well, we've seen holes that the methane blows out. That's only going to get more. It put scientific equipment underwater. We now know that ice-rich permafrost covers about 20% of the permafrost region, and in these ecosystems the permafrost is literally the glue that holds the land together. When it thaws, the land liquefies. In flat areas before the permafrost thaws, ecosystems are dry enough to be forested. When the permafrost thaws, all the trees die, topple over, and the whole system flips to a lake. I've been monitoring permafrost temperature in interior Alaska for the past 10 years outside Fairbanks. That's this researcher, Merritt Turtsky says. And we returned to our field sites only to find all our gauges and equipment totally underwater. You can imagine that the electronics did not survive. Rick Toman, a climatologist with the Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy, said he's seen similar changes in his state. Anything built on permafrost like roads will be affected. You can see it on the natural landscape as well. Because of the possible changed working conditions brought on by the permafrost melt, scientists working the Arctic will need to develop new strategies and get more creative as they conduct research there. A thawing Arctic will contribute a lot more carbon to the atmosphere, estimating it could be like the world absorbing the emissions of 2 more large countries. And then they threw some hopium in, saying it's not too late to do something about it. Well, they always throw that in there, but we know better. So I'll leave the link below to that. And then the other article I want to share is from shtfplan.com, and this is from today, May 21st, and it says tremor bursts, quakes you can't feel being recorded south of Seattle. Well, what they're talking about is what I'm showing on this real-time tremor map. Whenever I show earthquakes, I always show this. And these little triangles are the reporting stations here in the Pacific Northwest. And it goes almost down to Sacramento in California and up to Vancouver Island here. And so what they're talking about is this cluster here by Seattle, but we were seeing a lot down by Portland. So just to show you, like here are the clusters. In the last 12 hours we've had 1.1 hours of tremors, and now they're clustering near Seattle to the west. And in the last 24 hours, we're seeing 4.4 hours of tremors. So again, here to the west of Seattle and Tacoma, and then further south between Salem and Eugene on the west side. And the tremors are what happened before you have the earthquakes. But this article is going to tell us all about that. That's a bad break up there. Earthquakes that cannot be felt are being recorded in record numbers just south of Seattle, Washington. Quakes 20 miles below our feet are slowly releasing and have been since early April. Now, we'll see what they say, but tremors are not earthquakes. Tremors are the shaking of, measures the shaking of the tectonic plate at the reporting station, and that's what happens before an earthquake is registered. So we'll continue. For the first time since 2011, 3 distinct zones in the Pacific Northwest have been going off all at once. According to King 5 News, scientists say that the theory is that the subducting ocean plate is being stretched like taffy in the heat that is the mantle of the earth. And I'll show you what they're talking about. They're talking about this Cascadia subduction zone right here. This is the Juan de Fuca plate. This is the Pacific plate. This is the North American plate. And so where these plates come together, one is underneath another, and so they're talking about this Cascadia subduction zone. Let's see. If you have something out in the dark and you know it's dangerous, you know it's menacing, and every now and then you get a flashlight from it. Any flash of light, you get a flash of light from it. Any flash of light doesn't tell you a lot, but you piece them all together and you can start to put together all the angles. And you can start to see the dragon. And it's a big dragon, Melbourne said. This is Tim Melbourne, who runs the Northwest Geodetic Array, which is based at Central Washington University in Ellensburg. Melbourne's metaphorical dragon is the Cascadia subduction zone. That's what I just showed you. Sections of the ocean floor are being pushed under the western edge of the North American continent, creating pressure. Where the two plates join is a huge fault line, and the cooler upper portions of that fault are locked together. When they give way, typically between about 300 and 500 years, the result is a massive tsunami-triggering earthquake. The one scientists expect to occur off our coast is expected to be a magnitude 9, and some government agencies have already been preparing for the inevitable event. And here's a link to an article where it says FEMA's preparing for a magnitude 9 earthquake along Cascadia subduction zone. Episodes of tremors and plate slippage have been affecting the Pacific Northwest about every 14 months since at least the 1990s. Shaking from these events typically aren't felt and don't mean an earthquake is imminent. However, researchers believe the slip events are building up the pressure at the fault, which will eventually lead to a long-predicted magnitude 9 earthquake. Though it appears several slip events are occurring, the latest data doesn't seem to indicate the main event or the big one has started north of Seattle, but it's still a good idea to be prepared. Then here's a link on how to survive an earthquake. And that's the article. So I will leave the link below for that. So we're waiting and watching, and this is one of the reasons I'm doing these earthquake reports, is to keep everyone updated on the activity going on, not only here but around the planet, because it's pretty volatile. I'm going to leave this in the background. We live on a planet that is evolving and moving and breathing, and it's a living, I consider it a living being. And we're supposed to live in harmony, in a symbiotic relationship with Mother Earth and all the creatures here, and all the plant life and everything, but it didn't work out like that. And now we're in this huge mess, and we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. And we're at the end times in the Bible. So, and Jesus said, when his disciples were asking him what would be the signs of the end times, one of the things he said there would be earthquakes in diverse places. He specifically said that. And so that's the main reason that I'm doing these earthquake reports. So I have USGS pulled up here for all magnitudes for the last 24 hours. Oh, before we start on this, if anybody wants to know the lake level at Oroville Dam, I'll just sidetrack very briefly. Let's see if the 7 o'clock reading is in. Okay. It's at 890.98 feet. Let me log that. And unless something drastic changes, I'm not going to be doing a lot of reporting on the Oroville Dam situation anymore. I will report on these lake levels if you're interested, but it went down. It did go down yesterday because the inflow went down below the outflow for a little while, and now it's coming back up, and so now we're at 890.98, and we had gotten up to 891, and let's see, what was the highest? 891, and they didn't let it get any higher than that. And I'm beginning to think that somehow all of this stuff is being managed. Not quite sure how, and if I say anything, I'll be considered a conspiracy theorist. Can't prove it. It's just a feeling I have. Just can't prove it, so I'm not going to say anything. But I've delved into the Oroville situation as much as I care to. And people can make up their own minds about what they want to do. Alright, so we're here on USGS. We're seeing 234 earthquakes worldwide in the last 24 hours. Of those, we have 34 that are 2.5 magnitude and higher. So let's see what's about to come off the map. We have a 3.6 at Nook, Fairview, Alaska. That one came in at 8:12 last night. So, well, we'll be done way before then. So, I'm just going to go ahead and start up here in Siberia. I already showed it, but I'll show it again. There was a 4.8 near Nordvik, Russia, in Siberia that came in last night at 8:45 p.m. All of these times I'm going to be telling you are Pacific time, because that's my time zone. And what we're seeing with as far as methane release, we're seeing high releases continuously here in the Kara Sea and over to the east of Novaya Zemlya, and now popping up to the west of Novaya Zemlya. We're also seeing high methane releases here in this area in Siberia. It's a build and release. It's like this continuous thing happening. And Dave and I have both done our own research on this, and Rosemary Hill contributed, and then Robin wrote up a couple of good blog posts, and the Siberian traps from the Permian extinction were in this whole area in Siberia, and these were like lava fields where magma was just coming up to the surface of the earth and causing a lot of methane and carbon dioxide and other gases to be emitted. They're thinking that this was the main cause of the extinction that happened way back then. So we're seeing lots of methane starting to be released already here in Siberia, and it's still pretty cold up there. It's still pretty frozen. So there's that. Now let's hop on over to Greece. There is a 4.7 near Vartholomean, Greece at 1:58 this morning. Looks like it was on the land. 4.7 probably didn't do any damage. Just depends on what kind of infrastructure they have there. It could have. That's close to a 5. You'd feel that. You would feel a 4.7 more than likely. Wouldn't be huge, but you would definitely feel the earth moving. Next, we're seeing one in it's a 5.6 near Bamboo Flat, India. That's the reporting station. This came in at 5:39 this afternoon. We can see it's in the Coco Channel. It's part of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and the Andaman Sea is right over here to the east. So it's right there north of that island, right next to this red line. Coming on around, we have a 5.1 at Bunabogu, Indonesia. This happened at 11:42 this morning. 49 kilometers deep. We got a little wave there, so let's see if there was a tsunami warning from that or any of these others. No. The last date on any tsunami warnings was May 19th. Those are still listed, but we'll 5.1 on land. That could do damage, just depending on what kind of buildings were there, but you definitely feel that one too. Here's a 4.7 near Samlaki, Indonesia. This came in at 6:39 p.m. tonight, 173 kilometers deep. Coming on around is a 4.9 near Kavieng, Papua New Guinea at 9:04 last night. Next was a 4.7 near Buala, Solomon Islands at 11:49 this morning. Then we have a 4.5 near Sola, Vanuatu at 9:36 this morning, 146 kilometers deep. Coming on down, just north of New Zealand, we have a 4.9 south of the Kermadec Islands at 12:05 this afternoon. Now let's move on up to 4.6 near Agrihan, Northern Mariana Islands at 1:54 this afternoon. Then at Taiwan, looks like this is just barely off the coast, a 4.4 near Hualien, Taiwan. This came in last night at 6:37 p.m. I think that's all of them on the west side. Now we're going to come across the Pacific, and we're seeing a 5.3 at the West Chile rise. This came in last night at 11:33 p.m. Next is a 4.6 near Ovalle, Chile. This happened at 12:25 this afternoon. 5.0 near El Aguilar, Argentina at 12:18 this morning, 192 kilometers deep. then a 5.1 near Utah, Peru at 6:37 this morning. And those are the international quakes. Now let's go to all magnitudes. At Hawaii, we have 6 here today. I'll just call them off. 0.8, 2.2, 2.4, 2.4, 2.1, and 0.8. So that's showing activity. Not huge, but it's still moving over there. Then at the Caribbean, we have 6 here. We have a 2.6, 2.1, 2.3, 2.5, 3.3, and a 3.4. That's the highest one. So those are not big enough to do damage. It's just still showing movement. Now at Alaska, we've got 78 here today. And let's see how many of those are 2.5 magnitude or higher. 11. So the number of them that are above 2.5 magnitude and higher are getting higher. And it looks like they're going up in magnitude. So I'll just call them off. A 3.6, Nick Fairview, Alaska. 2.6, Anchor Point. 2.8, New Allakaket. 2.5, Talkeetna. 2.6, Koktovik. 3.8, Anchor Point. 3.3, Kobuk. 2.6, Kobuk. 2.6, Cape Yakataga. 3.4, Kalifornsky. And a 3.4, Koktovik. So if we just zoom in with all magnitudes, they're just coming up the center of the state here. Here's Anchorage. And let's see what Kobuk is doing here. It's 19 here today. So all of these others are, quite a bit smaller, it looks like. Mainly ones. Some of them just like under 2.5, like this 2.3, 2.0. So you got a lot of 2s and a lot of 1s. So remember that even the small earthquakes are important because they can lead to larger earthquakes. Now let's go to the lower 48. We're going to start here in Oklahoma. There's a 2.1 near Cushing, 2.9 Holdenville, and a 2.9 Langston. Now those 2.9s are getting up there a little higher. That could be a 3. That's close enough. That could be a 3. Now it looks like we've got a little cluster going on here. Now this is in Arizona, but the reporting station is St. George, Utah, and we have 6 here. Here's the largest one, a 2.6, so that's pretty high for this area. And then the rest of them are like a 1.4, and then the rest of them are under 1. So 6 there, just across the border. That's in Arizona. Next we have a 0.8 at Farron and a 1.5 at Gunnison. And now let's see what's going on at Yellowstone. Well, we have another one on the border here, a 2.2 near Cardston, Canada. This happened at 2:22 this morning. We had one there yesterday too. Here's a 1.3 Lincoln, Montana. 0.7 Three Forks, Montana. And a 0.7 Moose Wilson Road, Wyoming. So we've got 6 here today. So Lincoln has 2. It had a 1.2 and a 0.7. Those were stacked up. Now, coming on over to the Pacific Northwest, we already looked at this real-time tremor map. We can refresh it. And in the last, it defaults to the last 3 hours. Only half an hour of tremors were shown. So that's gone down a lot since the last few days. But we can see they're right here to the west of Seattle. And in the last 12 hours, we have 1 hour of tremors. So that's not a lot. And in the last 24 hours, 4.2. The last 48 hours was 11.8. We had more in yesterday's report than we did in today's report. So you can see they cluster around certain places. And it has to do with the way this subduction zone it works, this plate. Alright, so with that in mind, we've got a 1.7 near Keynault census designated place, Washington, at 12:45 this afternoon, and a 3.4 near Ocean Shores, Washington. Normally we don't see them that big here, but 3.4 is getting up there. Coming on down, we've got a 3.8 near Pine Hills, California. So that's on the edge of that subduction zone. And then where this red line comes down, this is the San Andreas fault line. So we're always interested in earthquakes that are occurring on or near that fault line. Let's come on over to California over here. We've got some small ones up here. Oh, what's this? 0.4 Spanish Springs. That's right before you get to Pyramid Lake. So we got a little one up here. 0.3 at Cold Springs. 0.6 Truckee. 1.2 Truckee. And a 1.1 Portola. Nothing at Lake Tahoe. Coming on down in the state, we've got 6 down here by Walker Lake and Hawthorne, including 1.4 near Tonopah. I don't even see that on the map, but anyway, it's there somewhere. And it's pretty quiet down here. Here as we come into southern Nevada, we've got 6 all here at Goldfield, right down here. They're small, they're under 1. And it's eerily quiet down here in southern Nevada. Here's a little tiny one, a 0.3 at Pahrump, 1.5 Alamo, and a 1.3 Alamo. Now remember last week we saw these clusters happening here? I'm just wondering if they were like doing something underground there and they got done. There was a lot of shaking, and now this week it's like almost nothing. So they got done with boring their hole or moving their tunnel boring equipment through, making new tunnels. That's just an assumption, I don't know. Here at Mammoth Lakes and Long Valley we have 12 today. These are pretty small. The largest one is this 1.5 at Bishop. Next at Coso Junction we've got 8 here today. These are small. The largest one is this 1.4. Coming down into Southern California here. Okay, we've got one in Baja, Mexico, a 3.7 near Meneadero at 8:47 this morning. That's pretty good size. That could be a 4. And in Southern California we have 24 here today, which is not a very high number. We see average 30 to 40 here a day. And so these are small. These are 1s and under. And we can look on the 2.5 magnitude or higher map and see. We saw that at St. George. Here's 10 right in this viewing area. Tiny ones at Idlewild and Aguanga. Here's one that just came in, 1.1 Trabuco Canyon, 1.3 Caltech Pasadena, 1.3 Lucerne Valley. Here's a 1.1 magnitude quarry blast at Alonto at 10:50 this morning. Coming on up this San Andreas fault line, we have a 1.1 and a 1.9 at the Pinnacles. And the Bay Area in San Jose, 2.2 near Fremont. And then here at the geysers we have 40 here today. That's a pretty high number. Normally we'd see 20 to 30. So 40 is a little bit of an uptick, I would say. Most of these are under 1s. 1.9 looks like is one of the highest ones. And then here's a 1.9 at Redwood Valley. That they've been having them there the last week or so. We've seen one there almost every day for about the last week. I think that's all of our earthquakes. So I'd like to end with reading another chapter from the Bible tonight. This is from Proverbs chapter 2. I think it's good for us to bring things back to a spiritual focus, because the world has gone so much the other way. And so we need to remember that we are much more than our bodies and much more than our expressions here in 3D. And that we need to be preparing, getting our spiritual house in order to leave right now. Because we've been given this time and given the knowing that time is short and that we probably don't have much longer here, just simply because of the different weather things and the methane and all the stuff having to do with abrupt climate change. So, how many people are really taking an inventory of their lives and doing a life review and getting things in order spiritually and emotionally? I think that needs to be done rather than focusing on politics and wars and dams and things like that. I mean, those are okay, but if that's going to just lead you to distraction, this is a very important time, and we've been given this gift of this last little bit of time with our awareness so that we can figure out how we're going to exit the planet in the best way possible. So I'd like to read Proverbs chapter 2. My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding. If thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil, and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they froward in their paths, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger, which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. That thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. So I'll be praying for everyone. And until next time, God bless you and go in peace, and I'll talk to you real soon. Good night.